Importing images into AutoCAD is relatively simple, but there's a couple of things you need to be aware of. In order to import an image, I'm going to go to Insert and use the Attach icon here. And this allows me to browse for a folder and a file. As you can see at the moment, I'm in my desktop, so I'm in this folder here, AutoCAD Docs, and I'm going to just use this image that I've created for this example. It's just a simple PNG file as a sort of logo. And you can see that when I select that file, it opens this pop-up window that gives me a few options. The main one that we need to consider is this one here, this path type. And you can see we've got three options: no path, relative path, full path. And I'm going to leave it on relative path for this image. And scale is already selected to specify on screen, that's fine. Rotation angle and the insertion point again specify on screen. So I'm going to leave all of this default for this insertion. Click OK, and you can see that it's now asking me to specify an insertion point. So I'm going to click on my model view, and then a scale factor, well, 1 is selected, and that's the original size. So I'm just going to press enter, and there is my image. Now, this image is not actually embedded into this file. This is a relative file. That means that it's actually bringing that information in from the actual PNG that's sitting on my desktop folder. This is very similar to video editing software. If you've ever done any video editing, you'll know that when you bring in video files to a timeline, they're actually there by reference. They're not actually embedded into the application file. So to prove this, I'm just going to show you this little demonstration. I'm going to import another image exactly the same way. So I've got a blue image here, logo 2, and this time I'm going to set it to full path. Now what AutoCAD's doing here is it's remembering the actual file path to that image, and the difference between full path and relative is going to determine whether it can find this file when I send this document to my client to open, or maybe a colleague to open. So I'm going to click OK, and one more time just insert that image. Okay, so I'm going to save this document now. So I'm just going to go to save. And of course we always save it as a DWG, so we're going to save this as a DWG document. I'm going to go back to my desktop, AutoCAD Documents folder, and Drawing 1, that's fine for this demonstration. Click Save. And you can see this is the file path for my document. E/Paul/desktop/AutoCAD Docs Drawing1.dwg. Now if I close this drawing down and go to that folder, you can see there's the three files. I've got my drawing. I can see a thumbnail of this because I'm actually viewing this in Windows as large icons. And you can see that I can see my two thumbnails of my PNGs that I've attached to my document. Now if I was to delete those two drawing files by pressing delete and put them in the recycle bin, and then reopen my drawing, you can see that actually it has an error. It tells me that it can't find those files anymore. It can't reference that path that it saved. And I can choose to reattach them, go and find them, or ignore it. So I'm just going to hit ignore for now. And here's the difference between relative and full path. Here on the relative one, you can see that it's looking for that image in the path, the same path as the actual drawing file. Whereas this one, which I saved as full path, is never going to open on someone else's computer unless their name is Paul and they've also got this desktop AutoCAD Docs file path. It's always going to resolve as an error. Where this one, relative path, if you save your images with your DWG in the same folder and send everything together, then it will always open. Okay, and just to complete this and show that it actually will return back, I'm going to go to my recycle bin. I'm just going to restore everything, restore all items, and there you go, back into this folder. And now if I try and open this file one more time, you can see that they're back. So the solution to this is to save them as relative paths and to send everything in one folder. And the way that I do that is if I just go back to this folder on my desktop, there's the folder, I just tend to zip this file up And on Windows, the way you do that is to select the folder, right click, go to send to, and go to compressed zipped folder. That will automatically create a zipped folder for you. And that is the folder that I would send to my client. Okay, so if I was to take these two documents, because this one here, this yellow one, is being referenced as relative path, I'm just going to create a new folder now, and I'll leave it just as called new folder so we can see the difference. And I'm just going to drop both of those files into this new folder. I'm going to change that one as well and put that back onto my desktop. So the original folder now is completely empty. I've got the image that was referenced as absolute path. That is now in a different absolute path. And the image file that was saved as relative path is still in the same folder as the original drawing. Let's see what happens. I'm going to open up AutoCAD one more time. And here you can see that we get an error. I'm going to ignore. But look, it's found the relative path image because that's in the same folder as this DWG drawing. But the one with the absolute path still can't be found because it's got to be in an E drive folder called Pool, folder called Desktop, folder called AutoCAD Docs, and then the PNG. So that is a clear example, I think, of why we always attach our images as relative. Now there's a quicker way of doing this whole process, and for this I just need to be able to see my file that I want to insert and my AutoCAD window. I'm going to create a new drawing. Okay, I'll just switch off the grid. And instead of going to attach and going through that whole process every time, the quicker way is just to take the image that's sitting in your folder that you want to use and just drag it in. And when you drag it in, it'll ask for an insertion point, and then it asks for scale factor. Press 1, enter, rotation, 0, enter, and that is now in my drawing. And by default, that should go in as a relative path, and this will all work. So that's just a quicker way of doing that whole process just by dragging and dropping. Once our image is imported into AutoCAD using relative path, we can manipulate this image just the same as any other object. You can see I can select it, I get a basic ribbon menu that I can use to change some of the settings. I can go to move and move the object. I can rotate the object. I can go to home and mirror the object, and all of the things that you'd expect to be able to do with an object in AutoCAD. If for some reason you don't want to, or you can't, maybe for copyright reasons, send the original image along with your DWG file, then there is a way of embedding an image into AutoCAD so that you only have to send the DWG to the client. And I'm going to show you how to do this now. Now, I don't think this is something you can do on Mac machines. I think this is just something that you can do on Windows. But I'm going to open up the actual original image just in the Photos viewer, and I'm going to use a tool here called snipping. So I'm just going to the Windows Start menu, just typing in snip there, and it comes up with the snipping tool. And this just allows me to take a copy of the pixels in that image, like that. And then I can just copy this information and paste it directly into my drawing. And what AutoCAD has done there is it's not saved the actual image path, it's embedded all of that pixel information into the drawing. And that's going to save and allow you just to be able to send that DWG file on its own with that pixel information embedded. No other files required. However, there is a couple of limitations with this. One, you can see that it's not such a great copy because it's just a bitmap image. Secondly, so that's the quality. Secondly, it doesn't behave in exactly the same way as a normal image. So for example, if I wanted to rotate this image, you can see it doesn't know how to rotate that image. It's just going to rotate it around that base point. It doesn't know how to manipulate that image in quite the same way. And thirdly, obviously it's going to make your DWG file much larger, so maybe sending it through an attachment on an email is no longer an option, but you'd have to upload it to a cloud service and send a link to the file. You can actually change the size of the image, so you can still scale it, but what you can actually do with this is really limited in terms of manipulation. But it's an option, and it's one worth knowing about. So if it's just a little logo that you was going to put onto your title block, for example, then copying and pasting it as raw image information is not a bad way to go.